The city lights shimmered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a golden glow over the penthouse's marble floors and crystal chandeliers. Laughter and the clink of champagne glasses filled the air. But as I stepped inside, the warmth of the room seemed to stop at the threshold. My heels clicked against the polished stone, echoing louder than the conversations that suddenly hushed. Eyes darted in my direction, some curious, others cold, a few openly amused. I could feel the weight of their stares, the silent questions hanging in the air. Why was I back? What had happened to me out there in the world? I tried to steady my breath, smoothing the front of my dress, but the sense of not belonging pressed in from all sides. My cousin, Olivia, stood at the center of it all, radiant in a designer gown, surrounded by admirers. She caught my eye, her lips curling into a smirk. Back already? Couldn't make it out there. Her words sliced through the room, drawing a ripple of laughter from those closest to her. I forced a smile, refusing to let her see how much it stung. The whispers grew louder, stories and rumors swirling around me like a storm I couldn't escape. I moved through the crowd, searching for a familiar face, but even the ones I'd grown up with seemed distant, changed. The penthouse itself was breathtaking, artwork on the walls, a grand piano in the corner, the city sprawling endlessly below us. It was everything I'd once dreamed of, and yet, in this moment, it felt like a gilded cage. Olivia's voice followed me, taunting, as if daring me to defend myself. But I stayed silent, holding on to the one thing none of them knew. The real reason I was here, the secret that would change everything. It hadn't always been this way. There was a time when I was the one everyone believed in, the one who carried the family's hopes on my shoulders. I remember the day I left, my suitcase packed with more ambition than clothes, my parents' proud smiles barely hiding their worry. The whole family gathered in the driveway, offering advice and promises to visit. Olivia had been there too, arms folded, her eyes sharp and unreadable. She hugged me, but her words were laced with something I didn't recognize then. Don't forget where you came from. Not everyone makes it out there. I laughed it off, thinking she was just being her usual self. But now I see it for what it was, a warning, or maybe a wish. I left for the city with dreams bigger than my bank account. I wanted to prove myself, to build something of my own, to come back with stories of success. At first, everything felt possible. I landed a job at a small marketing firm, worked late nights, made friends who felt like family. But the city was relentless. Rent was high, promotions were rare, and every step forward seemed to come with 2 steps back. I called home less often, embarrassed by my slow progress. My parents tried to reassure me, but I could hear the concern in their voices. The family group chat became a highlight reel of Olivia's achievements, her new job, her engagement, her first luxury car. She seemed to collect milestones as easily as breathing. Meanwhile, I struggled. I lost my job when the company downsized, burned through my savings, and moved into a cramped apartment with peeling paint and a leaky faucet. I took temp work, odd jobs, anything to keep going. Each setback chipped away at my confidence, but I refused to give up. I told myself that every underdog has their day, that my story wasn't over yet. Still, the distance between me and my family grew. They stopped asking about my plans and started asking when I'd come home. Olivia's voice was always the loudest, her messages dripping with concern that felt more like condescension. Maybe the city isn't for everyone. Some people just aren't cut out for it. The family's admiration for Olivia grew with every holiday gathering I missed. She hosted dinners in her new apartment, sent photos of her travels, and always made sure to mention how grateful she was for the support of everyone back home. My parents would call, their voices tinged with pride and a hint of regret. Olivia's doing so well. She's really making a name for herself. I tried to be happy for her, but it was hard not to feel like I'd been replaced. There were moments when I almost gave in, when the thought of coming home and admitting defeat seemed easier than fighting another day. But something inside me refused to let go. I remembered the dreams I'd carried with me, the belief that I could be more than what people expected. I started over again and again, learning from every failure, growing stronger with every disappointment. I watched Olivia's life unfold from a distance, her success casting a long shadow over my own struggles. She became the golden child, the one everyone pointed to as proof that our family could produce greatness. But beneath the surface, I saw the cracks. The way she watched me at family gatherings, the questions she asked about my life, the subtle digs hidden in her compliments. Her jealousy was always there, simmering just below her polished exterior. I realized that no matter how much she achieved, she still measured herself against me. And that knowledge became my quiet strength, the ember that kept me going when everything else felt lost. So I stayed in the city, working, saving, building something no one else could see. I kept my plans to myself, letting the world believe what it wanted. I let Olivia have her moment, her spotlight, her applause. All the while, I was preparing for the day I would return, not as the failure they expected, but as someone they never saw coming. Coming home was supposed to feel like a relief, a chance to breathe after years of struggle. I told myself things would be different this time, that maybe the distance had softened old wounds. But the moment I walked through my parents' front door, I felt the chill in the air. Hugs were brief, questions about my life were pointed, and every answer I gave seemed to disappoint. Olivia arrived late, sweeping in with a flurry of shopping bags and stories about her latest business trip. She barely glanced at me before launching into tales of rooftop dinners and exclusive events, her voice carrying through the house like a siren's call. That evening, as we sat around the dinner table, Olivia announced her plans for a grand party in the city's most coveted penthouse. "It's the place to be seen," she said, her eyes flicking to me. "Only the best for my friends and family." The room buzzed with excitement, everyone eager to hear more about the penthouse, how it overlooked the skyline, how celebrities had stayed there, how it was a symbol of having truly made it. My aunt gushed about the marble floors and private elevator. My uncle joked about needing to dress up just to be allowed in. Olivia soaked up the attention, her smile growing with every compliment. I listened quietly, feeling smaller with each passing minute. When the invitations were handed out, mine came last, almost as an afterthought. "Of course you're invited," Olivia said, her tone light but her eyes sharp. "Wouldn't want you to miss out on seeing how far we've all come." The implication was clear. This was her world now, and I was just a guest in it. My parents exchanged worried glances, but said nothing. I forced a smile, tucking the invitation into my bag, determined not to let her see how much it stung. That night, I lay awake thinking about the penthouse. It had always been a symbol in our family, success, status, the life we all dreamed of. Olivia had made it her stage, a place to show off her achievements and remind everyone of her place at the top. But as I stared at the ceiling, I couldn't help but wonder what would happen if the truth came out. If they knew what the penthouse really meant and who it truly belonged to. The thought sent a thrill through me, a secret I held close as armor against the cold. The party was set, the stage was hers for now. But the story was far from over. The night of the party arrived, and the penthouse was even more breathtaking than I'd imagined. The city sparkled below, a living tapestry of lights and movement, while inside, the air buzzed with laughter and the clinking of glasses. Olivia was in her element, gliding from group to group, her laughter ringing out like a bell. She wore a dress that shimmered with every step, her hair perfectly styled, her confidence unshakable. Guests fawned over her, eager to be seen in her orbit, and she basked in their admiration, her eyes occasionally flicking to me with a glint of satisfaction. I moved through the crowd, feeling the familiar ache of being out of place. Conversations paused when I approached, then resumed with a new edge, as if my presence was a puzzle no one could quite solve. Olivia made sure to keep me in her line of sight, her comments growing bolder as the night wore on. "It's so nice to see you back," she said loudly, drawing the attention of a nearby group. "I guess not everyone is cut out for city life. Some people just aren't built for the pressure." Laughter followed, sharp and unkind, and I felt my cheeks burn. I smiled, refusing to let her see how much it hurt, but inside, old wounds throbbed. She didn't stop there. As the evening unfolded, Olivia found new ways to remind everyone of my supposed failures. She recounted stories of my early days in the city, embellishing every misstep. Remember when you called home crying because your apartment flooded? She said, her voice syrupy sweet. Or that time you lost your job and had to work at that little cafe. I always said you were too sensitive for all that. The group around her laughed, some uncomfortably, others with open delight. I stood my ground, letting her words wash over me, my silence mistaken for weakness. But beneath the surface, things were shifting. The building staff greeted me with a familiarity that didn't go unnoticed. The doorman nodded respectfully as I passed, and the concierge offered a discreet smile, addressing me by name. Olivia's friends exchanged puzzled glances, but she was too caught up in her performance to notice. My phone buzzed with a message, and I excused myself to the balcony, the city's lights stretching out before me like a promise. I answered the call quietly, my voice low, the conversation brief but meaningful. When I returned, a few guests eyed me curiously, sensing something they couldn't quite place. As the night deepened, Olivia's need to assert her dominance grew. She led a toast, raising her glass high. To new beginnings and knowing your place in the world, she declared, her gaze fixed on me. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. I met her eyes, holding her stare, and for a moment something flickered in her expression, uncertainty, maybe even fear. I smiled, a small, private gesture, and turned away, my confidence growing with every passing minute. Throughout the evening, small details began to unravel Olivia's carefully constructed narrative. The building manager stopped by to check on things, addressing me with a quiet deference that didn't match my supposed status as an outsider. A waiter offered me a drink on the house, his wink subtle but unmistakable. Guests began to notice, their curiosity piqued. Whispers started to ripple through the room, questions forming behind polite smiles. Olivia tried to regain control, steering conversations back to herself, but the energy had shifted. I could feel it, a subtle current running beneath the surface, pulling the night in a new direction. I found myself standing by the grand piano, a group of relatives nearby. Olivia sauntered over, her voice dripping with false concern. "You know, I always admired your determination," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "It takes real courage to keep going when things don't work out. But sometimes, it's better to accept your limits and come home." Her words stung, but I saw the cracks in her armor now. The need for validation, the fear of being overshadowed. I looked at her, really looked, and saw the cousin I'd grown up with, the one who always needed to be the best, no matter the cost. I took a slow breath, letting the moment settle. "Thank you, Olivia," I said, my voice steady. "But sometimes the best things in life come from not giving up, even when everyone else thinks you should." The group fell silent, the tension palpable. Olivia's smile faltered, just for a second, before she recovered, laughing it off. But the damage was done. The room was watching now, waiting for what would happen next. As the party continued, I felt a quiet confidence growing inside me. The humiliation I'd endured was real, but it no longer defined me. I saw the way people looked at me, curious, uncertain, maybe even a little impressed. The staff's respect, the subtle hints, the shift in energy, all of it pointed to a truth that was about to come to light. Olivia sensed it too, her laughter growing more forced, her stories more desperate. She was losing control and she knew it. But as the night went on, I realized the time for silence was almost over. The party was reaching its peak, the music louder, the laughter sharper, and the air thick with the scent of expensive perfume and anticipation. Olivia, emboldened by the attention and perhaps a little too much champagne, decided it was time for one last performance. She gathered everyone in the living room, her voice ringing out above the chatter. "Let's play a little game," she announced, her eyes glinting with mischief. "Everyone share the most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to them. I'll start." She launched into a story about a minor wardrobe malfunction at a charity gala, the crowd laughing on cue. Then, without missing a beat, she turned to me. "Your turn," she said, her tone syrupy sweet. "I'm sure you have plenty to choose from. Maybe something from your time in the city? Or was it too painful to remember?" The room fell silent, all eyes on me. the tension so thick it was almost suffocating. I felt the old humiliation rising, the urge to shrink away, to let her have the last word. But something inside me snapped. I was done being her punchline, done letting her define my story. I stood up, my voice steady but quiet. You know, Olivia, it's funny how you always seem to know everyone else's story, but never your own. A ripple of confusion passed through the room, my family exchanging uncertain glances. Olivia's smile faltered, but she quickly recovered, waving me off. Oh, come on, don't be so sensitive. We're just having fun. You always did take things too seriously. I looked around at the faces of my family, people I'd loved and missed, people who'd believed Olivia's version of events for so long. Maybe I do take things seriously, I said, my voice growing stronger. Maybe that's why I never gave up, even when it would have been easier to come home and pretend everything was fine. Maybe that's why I learned that sometimes the truth is a lot more complicated than the stories we tell at parties. Olivia rolled her eyes, dismissive. Oh, please, don't act like you're some kind of martyr. We all know how things turned out for you. Her words hung in the air, sharp and final, but I didn't flinch. Instead, I let a small, knowing smile play at the corners of my mouth. Do you? I asked softly, my gaze never leaving hers. Are you sure you know everything about me, Olivia? About this place? About tonight? The room was silent, the tension electric. My family looked from me to Olivia, uncertainty flickering in their eyes. Olivia tried to laugh it off, but her voice wavered. What are you talking about? This is my party, my penthouse. Everyone knows that. I took a step forward, my confidence unshakable now. If only they knew who really owned the place they were standing in. A hush fell over the room, the kind that makes every heartbeat feel like a drum. Before anyone could speak, the elevator doors slid open with a soft chime. The building manager, Mr. Patel, stepped out, his presence calm and authoritative. He scanned the room, then walked directly toward me, bypassing Olivia and her circle of admirers. Good evening, Miss Carter, he said, his voice respectful and warm. I just wanted to confirm that everything is to your satisfaction tonight. If you need anything, please let me or the staff know. The silence was deafening. Olivia's face drained of color, her mouth opening and closing as if searching for words. My family stared at me, confusion and disbelief etched across their faces. I nodded to Mr. Patel, my voice steady. Thank you, Mr. Patel. Everything is perfect. He smiled, gave a polite nod to the rest of the guests, and quietly exited, leaving a trail of stunned silence in his wake. Olivia tried to recover, her laugh brittle. He must be confused. He probably meant to say my name. Everyone knows this is my party. But her voice wavered, and the certainty she'd worn all night began to crumble. I turned to face the room, my heart pounding but my resolve unshakable. Actually, Olivia, he wasn't confused. He knows exactly who I am, and so does everyone else who works here. A murmur rippled through the crowd. My uncle, always the skeptic, spoke up. What's going on? Olivia said this was her place. I met his gaze, then looked around at the faces of my family, people who had doubted me, pitted me, written me off. I let everyone believe what they wanted. I began, my voice clear and unwavering. When I left for the city, I struggled. I failed more times than I can count. But I learned. I worked hard, saved every penny, and took risks when it mattered. I started a small business, and when it finally took off, I invested everything I had. It wasn't easy and it wasn't quick, but I built something real, something I could be proud of. I paused, letting the weight of my words settle. A few years ago, I bought this penthouse. I kept it quiet because I wanted to know who would stand by me when they thought I had nothing. I wanted to see who would treat me with kindness and who would only care about appearances. I glanced at Olivia, whose eyes were wide with shock and something else, fear. I never needed to show off. I never needed to prove anything to anyone. But tonight, I think it's time everyone knew the truth. The room erupted in whispers, disbelief, and a mingling in the air. Olivia's friends looked at her, then at me, their admiration shifting. My parents stared at me, tears welling in my mother's eyes. You own this place, she whispered, her voice trembling. I nodded, emotion thick in my throat. Yes, Mom. I do. Olivia's composure shattered. You're lying, she spat, her voice desperate. You can't afford this. You were always struggling, always failing. This is impossible. I met her gaze, steady and calm. You never saw me, Olivia. You only saw what you wanted to see. You needed to be the star, the success story, but you never bothered to ask what I was really doing, or how hard I was working. You were so busy trying to keep me down that you never noticed I was rising. She shook her head, her hands trembling. This was supposed to be my night, my party, my penthouse. Her voice broke, the mask finally slipping. I felt a pang of sympathy, but I didn't let it show. You built your life on appearances, Olivia. I built mine on substance. That's the difference. My father stepped forward, his voice thick with emotion. Why didn't you tell us? I smiled softly, because I needed to know who I was without all of this. I needed to know I could stand on my own. My mother hugged me, her tears soaking into my shoulder. I'm so proud of you, she whispered. The rest of the family gathered around, their skepticism melting into admiration and regret. Olivia stood alone, her friends drifting away, their loyalty as shallow as the image she'd worked so hard to maintain. She looked at me, her eyes pleading. Why didn't you say anything? I met her gaze, gentle but firm, because I wanted to see who you really were, Olivia. And now I know. The room was transformed. Where there had been judgment and ridicule, there was now respect and awe. The people who had once dismissed me now looked at me with new eyes, their assumptions shattered. Olivia, once the center of attention, was left in the shadows, her lies exposed for everyone to see. I took a deep breath, feeling lighter than I had in years. The humiliation, the doubt, the pain, it all faded in the face of this moment. I had nothing left to prove. I had come home, not as the failure they expected, but as someone who had quietly, steadily built a life worth celebrating. The penthouse, once a symbol of everything I thought I wanted, was now just a backdrop to the real victory, reclaiming my story on my own terms. As the night wore on, the party took on a new energy. My family asked questions, eager to hear about my journey, my business, my life. The staff treated me with the same quiet respect they always had, and for the first time, I felt truly seen. Olivia slipped away, her absence barely noticed, her reign finally over. Vindication tasted sweeter than I'd ever imagined. I hadn't just survived, I'd triumphed. And as I looked out over the city, the lights stretching endlessly into the night, I knew that this was only the beginning. The party's energy shifted, the air now thick with a mixture of awe and awkwardness. My family, who had once looked at me with pity or skepticism, now regarded me with a new respect. My aunt, who had always championed Olivia, approached me first, her voice soft and uncertain. I'm sorry, she said, her eyes searching mine. We should have believed in you. I should have reached out more. I nodded, accepting her apology, but I didn't let her words erase the years of distance. Others followed, some apologizing, some simply standing in stunned silence, unsure of what to say. The ones who had whispered about my failures now struggled to meet my gaze. Olivia, desperate to regain her footing, tried to laugh it off. Well, I guess you really surprised us all. You always were full of secrets. She forced a smile, but no one joined her. Her friends, sensing the shift, drifted away, eager to align themselves with the new narrative. For the first time, Olivia's charm failed her. She was left standing alone, her attempts at conversation falling flat. The spotlight she'd clung to so fiercely had moved on, and she was powerless to reclaim it. I felt a strange sense of peace as I moved through the room. The humiliation I'd endured was replaced by a quiet dignity. I spoke with my parents, who hugged me tightly, their pride finally unburdened by disappointment. My father squeezed my hand, his voice thick with emotion. You did it your way. I'm proud of you. My mother wiped away tears, her smile radiant. You never needed to prove anything to us, but I'm glad you did it for yourself. I set boundaries, gently but firmly. When relatives tried to gloss over the past, I reminded them that respect isn't earned by success alone, but by how we treat each other in moments of doubt. I made it clear that I wouldn't tolerate the old patterns of judgment and comparison. Some bristled, but most nodded, chastened by the truth of my words. As the night wound down, I stood by the window, looking out at the city that had once felt so unforgiving. I realized I no longer needed anyone's approval. I was finally seen not as the underdog, not as the family's disappointment, but as someone who had quietly, persistently built a life of substance. The rejection I'd once felt so deeply was replaced by a sense of belonging, not because I'd changed to fit their expectations, but because I'd stayed true to myself. Olivia lingered near the door, her eyes downcast, her bravado gone. She offered a quiet, almost inaudible apology before slipping away, her presence barely a shadow. I watched her go, feeling a mix of sadness and relief. The power she'd held over me was gone, replaced by a hard-won freedom. I had reclaimed my dignity, set my own terms, and in doing so, found the respect I'd always deserved. Months have passed since that night, and life has settled into a new, peaceful rhythm. The penthouse is no longer just a symbol of what I've achieved. It's become a home filled with laughter, warmth, and the quiet confidence that comes from knowing I've earned every bit of it. My relationship with my parents has deepened. We talk often, not just about accomplishments, but about dreams, fears, and the small joys that make life meaningful. Some family members have drifted away, their absence a quiet relief. Others have reached out, eager to rebuild on honest, respectful terms. I've learned to welcome those who support me and let go of those who only ever saw me as a reflection of their own insecurities. Olivia and I rarely speak now, but when we do, it's civil, almost cordial. I've let go of the need for her approval, and in doing so, freed myself from the weight of old rivalries. Forgiveness, I've realized, isn't about excusing the past, but about refusing to let it define my future. I've found success, not in the eyes of others, but in the quiet moments when I feel proud of who I've become. Looking back, I see that the real victory wasn't in owning the penthouse or proving anyone wrong. It was in discovering my own worth, standing tall in the face of doubt, and choosing to live authentically. Sometimes, the best revenge is simply living well and letting the truth speak for itself.